Most brands spend months tweaking pages, ads, and creative, but ignore the one lever that impacts revenue more than anything else: pricing. In this video, we're breaking down the core principles behind e-commerce price optimization and how to choose prices that actually increase revenue and profit, starting with the one pricing mistake that most brands don't realize they're making. Now, when people hear price optimization, they usually think it means raising prices. And that's not what it actually is. Price optimization is about finding the price that makes you the most money overall, not just the price that gets the most clicks. And that difference matters. There's a stat from McKinsey that gets referenced a lot for a reason. Even a 1% price increase can lead to an 8 to 10% increase in operating profit as long as demand doesn't drop. That's huge, and it's why pricing often has more impact than another round of ad creative or a tiny conversion rate tweak. A price can look great on the surface and still hurt you if it squeezes your margins, attracts low-intent buyers, and makes paid traffic harder to scale. Good price optimization is really about balance, conversion, margin, and how valuable the product feels to the customer. Most brands treat price as fixed and try to optimize everything else. The smarter ones do the opposite. But before you change a single number, you need to understand how sensitive your customers actually are to price, because that changes everything. Price elasticity sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. It's just how much demand changes when price changes. Some products are very price sensitive. Raise the price a little and the demand drops fast. Other products barely react at all. Now, here's why this matters. Across retail and e-commerce pricing studies, a 10% increase in price typically leads to only a 2 to 4% decrease in demand for moderately elastic products. That gap between price change and demand change is exactly why pricing has so much leverage. In other words, demand usually doesn't fall dollar per dollar with price. And that's what surprises most merchants. You don't need advanced models to see early signals of elasticity in your own store. You can usually spot them just by watching behavior. If sales only spike when discounts are running, if conversion drops sharply the moment a promo ends, that's often a sign that demand is highly price sensitive. Now, on the other hand, if you've raised prices slightly in the past and sales stayed relatively steady, that's a strong signal you may have more pricing headroom than you think. This matters even more when you consider that average e-commerce conversion rates typically sit around 2 to 3%. When conversion is already low, increasing how much each visitor is worth through pricing often has a bigger impact than chasing tiny conversion lifts. So elasticity tells you how customers react to price changes, but it doesn't explain why a price feels reasonable or expensive. And that's where psychology comes in. Pricing isn't just math, it's how people feel when they see a number. And this is where psychology starts doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Charm pricing. You've seen this everywhere for a reason. Prices ending in 9 or 99 consistently outperform round numbers in many e-commerce categories. In multiple retail pricing studies, charm pricing has been shown to lift conversion by a few percentage points, even though the actual price difference is negligible. That's why $49.99 feels meaningfully cheaper than $50, even when shoppers know it's basically the same price. It doesn't work in every category, but when it does work, it's one of the simplest optimizations you can test. Anchoring is about what price someone sees first. Research in behavioral economics shows that the first number presented heavily influences how all the other prices are judged. In e-commerce, that's why showing a higher priced option first can make the next option feel more reasonable, even if nothing else changes. This is why premium options can increase sales of mid-tier products. Compare at prices change perception, not just value. Good, better, best pricing works so well. The anchor sets expectations. Here's a counterintuitive one. In many categories, higher prices actually increase perceived quality. Studies on consumer behavior consistently show that when shoppers don't have perfect information, they often use price as a shortcut for quality. This shows up a lot in skincare and beauty, supplements, apparel, and specialty or branded goods. Price too low, and people start questioning the product instead of the offer. Relative value framing. And this is where bundles, tiers, and thresholds really shine. When shoppers compare options side by side, they stop asking, "Is this expensive?" and start asking, "Which option makes the most sense?" That shift alone can increase AOV without lowering prices. And once you understand how pricing psychology shapes perception, the next step is putting it into action through your offer structure, because that's where theory turns into revenue. This is where a lot of price optimization actually happens, without touching your base price at all. Because how you frame the price often matters just as much as the number itself. Bundles work because they shift the decision. Instead of asking, "Do I want this product?" shoppers start asking, "Is this bundle worth it?" And in many e-commerce categories, bundles reliably increase average order value by 10 to 30%, especially when the products naturally go together. You're not forcing a higher price, you're increasing perceived value. That's why bundles are so common in beauty, supplements, apparel, and consumables. Volume discounts encourage buyers to buy more without discounting every order. Instead of lowering the price for everyone, you reward larger carts. This works particularly well when fulfillment costs don't scale linearly. Customers already buy multiple units over time, and you want to increase AOV without running site-wide discounts. It's a subtle nudge, but it adds up quickly. Free shipping thresholds are one of the most effective and least risky levers in e-commerce. Data consistently shows that shoppers will add extra items to their cart just to avoid paying for shipping. In fact, shipping costs is still one of the top reasons for cart abandonment across e-commerce. By raising or optimizing your free shipping threshold, you're not lowering product prices, you're changing behavior. And that's a big difference. Subscriptions change how people think about price. A smaller recurring number often feels easier to commit to than a larger one-time purchase, even if the lifetime value is higher. And that's why subscription pricing can increase predictability, improve retention, and raise long-term revenue per customer. Especially in replenishable categories, this shift alone can dramatically change unit economics. Once your offer structure is doing some of the heavy lifting, you can start optimizing price with much lower risk. And that's where simple playbooks come in. These are playbooks you can actually run without blowing up conversion or second-guessing every decision. They're designed to be low risk, easy to test, and repeatable. The Micro Increase Playbook. This is one of the safest places to start. Instead of making a big price move, you test small increases, usually in the $1 to $5 range. Why does this work? Well, small increases are less noticeable to shoppers. They help you measure elasticity without shocking demand. Even minor lifts compound quickly across volume. Many merchants are surprised to find that conversion barely moves while profit jumps meaningfully. That's often the first sign you've been underpricing. Good, better, best pricing. This playbook isn't about pushing everyone to the most expensive option, it's about anchoring choice. By adding a premium option, you make the mid-tier option feel safer. Shift customer choice without forcing higher prices, and you capture different willingness to pay levels. In practice, this often increases revenue simply because more shoppers land in the better tier instead of the cheapest one. Threshold optimization. This is one of the lowest risk optimizations available. Instead of changing product prices, you adjust free shipping thresholds, volume discount thresholds, spend-based incentives. Shoppers already want to avoid friction like shipping fees. A small nudge often pushes them to add one more item. And because the base price stays the same, this approach is easier to test and easier to roll back if needed. Once you've picked a playbook, the most important part is execution, because the way you test pricing matters just as much as the idea itself. Price testing doesn't need to be complicated, but it does need to be clean. Most bad pricing decisions don't come from the idea, they come from the sloppy testing. Here's what a solid price test actually looks like. Choose one variable to test, price only. This part is non-negotiable. If you change price and layout and messaging at the same time, you won't know what caused the result. One test, one change, price only. That's how you get data you can trust. Split traffic evenly between variants. Each price needs a fair shot. If one version gets more or higher intent traffic, the result is skewed before the test even starts. Balanced traffic is what turns a test into a decision and not a guess. Run tests long enough to reach confidence. This is where most teams rush and where results break down. Conversion behavior can vary 10 to 30% between weekdays and weekends, depending on the traffic source and category. If you stop a test after a couple of days, you're often just measuring timing, not pricing. That's why price tests should usually run for at least 1 to 2 full business cycles, so you can capture normal buying behavior instead of a temporary spike. Judge the right metrics. Don't stop at conversion rate. A price that converts slightly less but increases average order value or revenue per visitor often wins long term. That's especially important in e-commerce, where average conversion rates already sit around 2 to 3%. Small swings in value per visitor often matter more than tiny conversion changes. This is where tools make life easier. Shogun's A/B testing app allows merchants to test different price points directly on Shopify without duplicating products or manually editing themes. And that means cleaner setups, fewer workarounds, and more reliable comparisons. Instead of debating internally, you can see how real shoppers actually respond. And once you've run a few clean price tests, pricing stops feeling risky. It starts feeling strategic. Price optimization is one of the most effective ways to increase e-commerce revenue without spending more on traffic. In fact, pricing research consistently shows that small price improvements often have a bigger impact on profit than comparable gains in conversion or volume, which is why this lever is so powerful when you use it intentionally. Now, if this video helped, like, subscribe, and visit the Shogun blog for more e-commerce optimization strategies that help you grow smarter.